Hi there, it's me again, Frank Switzer, your instructor for COM-225. I am your captain of communication, your doctor of diatribe, your rascal of rhetoric. Okay, fun and games are over. We need to talk about assignments in more detail. So listen closely, and if you can, follow along on Canvas with the assignments. I'm going to start with the speeches, the big ones, because everything else just sort of is easy from there. The big speeches, the 4 speeches that you have to do, really those need the most unpacking and understanding. And again, watch closely, take notes. Any questions, contact me as soon as you can so that you can get that cleared up as best you can. So I have up here the autobiographical speech submission by video, which is due September 15th. This means that you will have already submitted your autobiographical rough draft assignment by September 11th, 4 days earlier. Okay, so you need to prepare your speech based on these criteria. Total points, 66 points. You're going to use this speech in theory to introduce yourself to the rest of the class, but the rest of the class is not going to see it. I'm the only one who is going to see it, unless I think it's really spectacular. Then I might show it to some members of my family. I don't know. I'm kidding. I won't do that to you. At any rate, it's a way for me to get to know you a little bit better. And there's a certain way that you are required to organize this speech. First of all, it needs to be organized according to the 6-step guide for effective public speaking. I hope that by now already you have read those 17 or 18 pages in the manual, so you're familiar with the 6-step guide. The 6-step guide being excite step, launch step, relate step, main points, reiterate step, and energize step. That's how you have to organize your speech. The next video will unpack the 6-step guide a little bit more. And by the way, that'll probably be the shortest video that we'll do together. And the reason I said that is because my production manager is sitting behind the camera and he was wondering about that. So now he knows. So, pages to reference in the manual for this speech are 110 to 130. Like I said, it'll take you 30 minutes to read that. It'll be a great overview, and it'll include your rough draft template that you need to use to put together your rough draft. The speech is between 4 and 6 minutes. That's a pretty wide area of time to kind of drive your speech truck through. You should have no trouble making it to 4 minutes and stopping before 6 minutes, hopefully. One of the reasons that you need to practice is so that you can time it and make sure that you're within that 4 to 6 minute time. You will suffer a loss of points on the assignment if you're under 4 minutes or if you're over 6 minutes. We have to dock you some points for that. So it's important that you practice your speech and time your speech so that you know that you're going to fit in within whatever the time requirements are for each of your speeches. This one happens to be 4 to 6 minutes. And let me just give you a little helpful insight, tip, clue about the way people speak when the camera is on or when they're actually in front of people as opposed to practicing it. Generally speaking, you will speak 10 to 20% faster when the camera is on or when you're in front of people than you do when you practice. So if you're practicing your speech, your autobiographical speech, and you keep coming in at around 4 minutes, my counsel to you would be to add a little bit more content, because when you record it, it'll probably be about 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And you'll end up getting some points taken off. We tend to speak faster when we're actually presenting and not practicing. So that's some helpful insight. Another reason you need to practice is because, here you go. This will be on one of your quizzes. And it's important to know this. And you should just write this down right now. The spoken word is different than the written word. The written word is different than the spoken word. The way our brains process the information, when we read something and we take it in this way, the brain processes it differently than when we hear something and take it in this way. So the reason I bring that up is because some people can write the most magnificent prose, the most beautiful rhetoric on paper, But when they say it out loud, the problem with that is that it doesn't hear as well as it reads. And that's a challenge. So you have to practice your speech, not only timing it, so you know the timing is good, but you have to practice your speech out loud so that you can hear the way it's going to sound to somebody's ear, and you can start wordsmithing your speech for the ear and not for the eye. That's another really important and I would say crucial tip for public speaking. You need to say it out loud so that you can hear how it's going to be received by people, and thus be able to wordsmith it so it's better for the ears. So, very important to know, you need to practice. I'm going to talk again about that more later. Your rough draft should have been turned in by September 11th. In other words, the video recording is due the 15th. Your rough draft should have been in by September 11th. I should have had comments back to you fairly quickly to help you maybe understand how you might change your speech. Also, another thing, we'll talk about this in the next recording as well when we talk about the 6-step guide. Other than your tribute speech, which is a manuscript speech, it's a required manuscript speech. You're going to speak from a manuscript. Essentially, you're going to learn how to give a speech while reading. These first 3 speeches, including your autobiographical speech, must be given in an extemporaneous way. Now, you can read about extemporaneous speaking in the manual. It's, I think it's page 91 or 92 in the manual. You can read about extemporaneous speaking. But let me explain to you what extemporaneous speaking is. Your first 3 speeches have to be extemporaneous. Extemporaneous speaking is not a synonym for impromptu. Impromptu speaking is when somebody walks up to you and says, hey, I need you to make this presentation in 5 minutes. You got 5 minutes to prepare. That's impromptu speaking. When I was on the speech team at Grand Canyon University years ago, one of my events was impromptu speaking. We didn't even get 5 minutes there. You would walk in, they would hand you a quote or hand you a topic or hand you an item, and the minute they handed it to you, you had 60 seconds to put together a speech and then start presenting. That's impromptu. That is not extemporaneous. Extemporaneous speaking is knowing your speech well enough that you can speak, you can present your speech just from notes. Your notes will sort of inspire you to then speak conversationally to your audience. You look at your notes to see what's next, and then you speak extemporaneously or conversationally from your notes. It's speaking from notes. You can speak from an outline, you can speak from notes, you can speak from a sentence outline, but essentially the idea of extemporaneous speaking is it gives you the ability to make eye contact with your audience and to interact and feel interactive with your audience even though you're the only one doing the talking. So that's extemporaneous speaking. So you've done your worksheet. Now you're getting ready to turn in your speech. Here are your 3 main points. So you have excite step, launch step, relate step, main points. This is the bulk of your speech. This is 60 to 80% of your content is going to be in your 3 main points. And your 3 main points need to be here you go. Educational goals, wow, I'm sorry, I can't find where, oh, there it is. Your personal background, your educational background, and your professional background. Noah, if there's any way you can edit that part out, please. I'm kidding. You don't need to worry about it. Hey, everybody makes mistakes. All right, here you go. Your 3 main points for your autobiographical speech: personal, educational, professional. And you can read through the information on pages 110. What is it? 110 to 130. You can read through all that information to get an expanded understanding of what those 3 main points will look like. You got to present all 3 main points, but you get to pick the specific subpoints that you want to go into. Your rough draft in the book will have way more questions and way more information than you could ever present in a 4 to 6 minute speech. So the question about, do you have pets? You don't even answer that. You don't say, hey, I don't have any pets. You just don't deal with it. If there's a question about Tell us about your siblings. You don't have any siblings. Okay. And even if it says tell us about your siblings, you don't have to tell us about your siblings if you want to lean into some of the other topics. You don't have to use every topic, subtopic, but those 3 main points need to be used: personal, educational, and vocational or career, professional. Works cited for this speech is optional. You don't have to turn in a works cited. The works cited would probably be something like me. That's about it, okay? The rest of your speeches will require a works cited page. You need to understand that. So there's no need to gather research. You're already the expert on this topic. Presentational aid is also optional for this speech. You don't have to do a presentational aid. Your other 3 speeches, you will need a presentational aid. So really, you can, for 4 to 6 minutes, just talk to us about yourself under the rubric of the 6-step guide. There it is. Oh, extemporaneous style delivery is on pages 92 and 93. That'll explain a little bit more, but I have it there. Extemporaneous means conversational. You do not read a manuscript. If you're not making eye contact in these first 3 speeches, I'm going to deduct points for that. Okay? And then the scoring criteria. Support form, the rubric is actually below, which we'll look at in just a second. Step 2, it says record and submit the speech. There's some instructions on how to record. You should speak with confidence, not arrogance. Don't ever speak with arrogance, but you should speak with confidence. Okay? You need to be conversational. And I hope you have some fun. And make sure that you record and upload this by September 15th at 11 o'clock. By the way, if you can, if it's possible, have someone else run the recording device for you, like I am now, and maybe even have a few members of your family or friends in the audience as you record it. That can be fun. Now, if you go down below the assignment rhetoric, you will see the grading rubric. Here's how this grading rubric works. There are 33 to 35 different criteria that you must meet in each of these speech assignments. And you get 0, 1, or 2 points based on each of those. So the autobiographical speech has 33 criteria, each worth up to 2 points. So 33 times 2 points is 66 points. The autobiographical speech is worth 66 points. The first 10 of those criteria are all about whether or not you use the 6-step guide. Did you use the 6-step guide, and how effectively did you use it? Did you have an excite step? Did you have a launch step? Another criteria under the launch step. Did you have a relate step that included a statement of credibility? How were your main points arranged? Did you have a reiterate step? Couple of criteria there. 2 criteria on your energize step, and then criteria 10, all of the steps of the 6-step guide were presented in proper order. Criteria 11 through 20 then has to do with the content of your speech. So you have 20 points there, content. Your main points were sufficiently limited for the time frame allowed. Your main points included objective and accurate facts. Your main points included appropriate information. Your main points served to help the audience. There was sufficient emotional control to share incidents from the speaker's life. Main points were well developed. Main points were presented in a clear and interesting way, developed with high impact techniques. In other words, you're introducing your new main point with an impact, with a statement, with a way of getting our attention. Okay? Language that you used was accurate, clear, interesting, and appropriate. You were using an oral and conversational approach rather than reading. And that's that extemporaneous thing. And then you used transitions between your main points. Again, we'll talk more about transitions in the next video, but transitions are also important. Then criteria 21 through 30 is all about your delivery. Everything about your delivery. So you had excellent command of the message. Your volume was good. Your rate, pitch, and quality of speaking was good, and you had no upspeak. What's upspeak? Upspeak is this thing where people start to use declarative sentences, but they always go up at the end of the sentence in their tone. So if I'm saying, yeah, my new car is yellow, I really like the Chicago Blackhawks. Okay, that's called upspeak, and it's annoying. You got to stop doing it if you're doing it. The only time you have upspeak in our culture is when you are asking a question. That's the way it's supposed to be. This is what all the public speaking books are talking about when it says upspeak. So be careful of upspeak, okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, good. All right. Articulation was clear. Pronunciation was accurate. I am fascinated by the number of students who will have things in their presentations like names. Names, and they've never practiced pronouncing difficult names, and so they get to the name and they either skip over it or they absolutely butcher it. You need to practice hard words and hard names, okay? You're making eye contact. Your facial expressions and gestures are interesting. Your posture, movements, all of that is good. You have very few vocal pauses. So, you know, like. Oh my goodness. I was listening to a podcast. Somebody sent me, a lot of people send me podcasts to listen to. And I mostly enjoy listening to them, but I got through 10 minutes of this one podcast because two guys who were on the podcast were really enthralled with the word like. It just drove me crazy. Didn't that sentence just drive you crazy? Drove me crazy. I had to stop the podcast. Don't want to listen to it anymore. Don't use you know, and like. All right. Then you have a word processed outline that follows the 6-step guide. That's criteria 31. Here you go. You don't have to turn in a word processed outline if you've already turned in your rough draft. I will count that as your word processed outline. Okay? Then you have things like late speech penalty, time penalty, purpose penalty, delivery penalty. You know, there can be a purpose penalty. If you decide to give a persuasive speech during your autobiographical speech, you'll get 0 points. Okay? Now you're like, okay, that never happens, right? Actually, a few times it will. Occasionally somebody will say, I want to give an informative speech about this, and I'll say, that sounds like a persuasive topic to me. And they'll say, no, I'm just going to do informative. And then they start giving the speech and they end up trying to persuade people about it. That's a problem. Be careful of that. Delivery penalty, if you don't use extemporaneous delivery, you'll lose 20 points. And then 22 and 23, you have to write an intellectual standard which will be part of your rough draft. So you'll already have that in there as well. If you turn in your rough draft, you'll get the 2 points for the intellectual standard. And then the video recording was of good quality. If I can't see something or hear, sometimes people will send me speeches and I can't hear them. So that's a problem. So we have to deduct points for that. So that's your autobiographical speech. Let's move now to the informative speech. Now that you've kind of got the gist of these speech assignments, we're going to go much faster through these other three. So here's your informative speech. Your informative speech is due September 26th. You should have turned in your rough draft by September 21st. The informative speech is worth 70 points. One of the great things about Andrew Stanton's TED Talk video that I had you watch as part of video acknowledgement number 1, the most important thing he says, I think, is use what you know. When it comes to an informative speech, I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel. I think you need to figure out what you already know a lot about, what you enjoy, what you maybe even have a passion for, and try to figure out how to give an informative speech on that. You know, we're right next to 25 years I've been at Paradise Valley Community College, and I am ashamed to tell you that I still don't know the name of that horsey school next door to us. That's the high school. Is it the Arizona Equine and Agricultural School? I can't remember. Anyway, I've always referred to it as the horsey school. I don't mean that pejoratively. It's just that's how I refer to it. I even refer to it to students who are part of the Horsey School, and you may be part of the Horsey School taking this class online. I apologize if that's offensive to you. I don't mean any derogatory remark about the Horsey School, but we've had a lot of students from that school who take communication classes at PVCC while they're still in high school. Guess what? We get a lot of informative speeches on horses. So do what you know. My favorite, when I teach this in class, I will actually give a sample informative speech, and my sample informative speech is how to plan for and train for your first marathon. So I'm a distance runner. I love running, and I like talking about running, and I know about running. I know how to train for and finish marathons, and I also know that finishing a marathon is on a majority of people's bucket list. It may not be on your bucket list yet. I know most of you are going, no, I'm not going to ever run a marathon. It's amazing. As you get older, there will start to be this little nag at you that you need to somehow figure out how to finish a marathon. That's like a bucket list thing, sort of a life achievement thing. So I like to give a speech on how to plan for, train, execute your first marathon. So do what you know. That's okay. And we'll talk about how there are 4 things about your speech that are really important that you need to understand. Let me see if I have it in here. No, that's fine. As I can tell you. So number 1, your speech should be of interest to you. Do what you know. Number 2, your speech should be of interest to your audience. Well, how do I know if it's interesting to my audience? How you present it is whether or not it's going to make it interesting to us, okay, or me. Years ago, I had an in-class student come up to me and say, I'm going to do my informative speech on the history of Helvetica font. Informative speech on font, a certain type of font. And I just looked at him and said, why? Why would you ever do that? And he said, well, I'm a graphic design artist. We use a lot of Helvetica font. There's a very interesting millennial, like several millennia history associated with Helvetica font, and I think it would be interesting. And this is back when I was a little bit more cynical and snarky. Well, it's your grade. You can go ahead and do that if you want. I'm like, a speech on font? Are you kidding me? Let me tell you something. This was 20 years ago. I'm still talking about this speech. It was that good. I was fascinated. He made it interesting. That's up to you. You need to make sure that the speech is appropriate, okay? So you have to make sure that you're not going to offend people. You can talk about dicey things, controversial things, but you need to do it making sure that you're not going to just flat out offend people. I've had lots of speeches on abortion and same-sex marriage and gender fluidity. What are those cells? Help me out here, Noah. Stem cells. I've had a lot of speeches on this stuff. I'm not judging these speeches based on where I am positioned on this stuff. I'm judging and grading these speeches on whether or not you followed the criteria. That's all. And part of the criteria is not to offend when you give a speech about a controversial topic. I will tell you, I'm just being transparent with you. I had somebody in a class in COM-225 about 15 years ago give a speech on why abortion is wrong, and it was so offensive the way this person organized this speech. I'm pro-life, but I was offended by this speech. Do you get my drift here? Okay. Understand that being appropriate, being culturally sensitive is an important part of public. So you need to make sure that you're not offensive in your speech. And then finally, your speech needs to be academic in nature. Well, what does that mean? Okay. Well, here you go. The history of peanut butter and the history of the science of stem cells. Which sounds more academic? Well, of course, the stem cells sounds more academic. I will also tell you that the single greatest informative speech I have ever had in a class was given on the history of peanut butter. And the reason is because a topic in and of itself is not academic. How you approach the topic is what makes it academic or not. You can give a stem cell speech on stem cells, and it can be all your opinions and emotions. That's not academic. No research, just what you think and how you feel about it. That's not academic. This history of peanut butter speech, the three main points were peanut butter during World War II, peanut butter in the 60s and 70s, and peanut butter today, and it was absolutely fascinating. Good transition statements in between. It helped explain why peanut butter has become such a huge consumer product today. It started with World War II when peanut butter was included in the MREs, the meals ready to eat for the military during World War II. Millions of people came back from the war with a taste for peanut butter, and so they started looking for it in the grocery stores in the 50s and 60s, and it's exploded now. What used to be one shelf in a grocery store in the 30s of peanut butter is now, go to Safeway. It's 3 different bins. And you got all kinds of different peanut butters, and chunky and creamy, and peanut butter with jelly in it. Brian Regan, the comedian, often says that, if you throw some croutons in there with the peanut butter and jelly thing, then you got a sandwich without any cleanup. It's pretty cool. You just eat it with a spoon. Anyway, I digress. The point is that the peanut butter exploded, and we have all these different peanut butter, natural peanut butter, whatever. Anyway, so those are the kind of the 4 interest to you, interest to your audience, academic in nature, and appropriate in its nature. So make sure you do that on any speech that you do. Those are 4 helpful hints. Okay. For your informative speech, you can have 2 to 5 main points, but generally 3 main points works best. You need a works cited for this. Again, if you turn in your works cited with your rough draft, then you're done with that. You need to have a presentational aid. So you need to do PowerPoint or make a poster board or something. You need a presentational aid in the informative speech, and you can read, again, the textbook on presentational aids and get some ideas about how to do presentational aids. Obviously, in class, 95% of our presentational aids are some form of PowerPoint or Prezi or whatever. Extemporaneous style delivery, and then you have the support form down below, which shows how I'm. So the criteria on grading is generally pretty much the same in the first 10 criteria, the 6-step guide. The middle criteria, though, is where it gets different. 11 through 20, each of the speeches is going to have different things that you're trying to do. For instance, number 11, in the informative speech, topic was appropriate for the audience. Topic was sufficiently limited for the time frame. Sufficient knowledge of the demonstrated. Main points were relevant and developed. Main points met the needs and interests of the audience. Main points, again, main points were presented in a clear and interesting way, introduced with high impact techniques. Language was clear and interesting and appropriate. Oral conversation versus written style of language, and then transitions. And then 21 through 30, your delivery is exactly the same in every one of your speeches. So you have, excellent command, rate, pitch, articulation, pronunciation, all that stuff down there. This speech has 5 additional criteria. The autobiographical speech had 3 additional criteria. So you need a word processed outline. Again, if you've turned in your rough draft, that counts as your word processed outline. You need a word processed works cited. If you don't have a works cited on your rough draft, then you need to turn in a separate works cited for your speech. You need to use 1 presentational aid. There's all the penalty stuff there. You need to have your intellectual standard, which is going to be part of the rough draft, and then your video recording is of high quality. Now let's move on to the persuasive speech. I'm going to spend a little bit more time there because the persuasive speech has a different requirement for your main points that you must follow. Okay? So, final submission of the persuasive speech is due October 9th. You should have turned in your rough draft by October 3rd. Notice the amount of time between the rough drafts and the final presentation has grown from 4 days now to 6 or 7 days, because I need the persuasive speech is the most challenging speech, and I think we'll need more time to be able to work through some kinks or whatever. Persuasive speech is worth 70 points. Here you go. You need to select a topic for a question of policy. This needs to be a policy. It needs to be about immigration. It needs to be about food stamps. It needs to be about something that society is dealing with. Okay. So often I will have somebody come up and say, can I give a persuasive speech that argues that LeBron James is the greatest basketball player in history? No, that is not a question of policy. That doesn't help anybody's life or change anybody's life or change anybody's perspective on something. Certainly not mine, because one of the problems with a speech about LeBron James being the greatest basketball player in the history of the NBA is that he's not. And he never will be. It's Michael Jordan. There you go. All right? So, anyway, no, you can't give a speech like that. You can't make up something like that. It has to be something dealing with a policy of some sort. Organic foods or pesticides or AI. That's a big one now. You know, a persuasive speech about AI. Persuasive speech about social media. A big policy topic in today's culture is whether or not we should have cell phones in classrooms anywhere. 70% of elementary schools in the United States today have decided no more cell phones in their classrooms. The percentage is not nearly as high for high schools, but it's starting to creep up. It's starting to get there because administrations and teachers are finally starting to realize that cell phones are a problem in classrooms. Anyway, cell phones policy, social media policy, whatever you want to do, but it's got to be something that's policy driven. Contact me if you have some ideas and let me know what you're thinking about, and I can help direct. Pages to reference for your persuasive speech, 203 to 234. Somewhere in there. You need a works cited, you need a presentational aid, you need an outline for this speech. Now, main points in this speech. You need to have 7 main points in this persuasive speech, and here they are. Number 8 in the assignment instructions, the 7 required main points. Here you go. Number 1, a statement of the problem. Whatever you think the problem is. Recreational drugs, all recreational drugs should be legalized. Okay, we're going to go the way of Portland, which, by the way, reversed their decision about 18 months ago. But at any rate, cities are dealing with this. Statement of the problem. Second, statement of your plan to deal with the problem. So you have a problem, you have your plan to deal with the problem. Number 3, show how the plan meets the need or solves the problem. Number 4, show how your plan is workable and practical. Your plan actually works and it's practical. It's not going to cost an arm and a leg, usually taxpayers. It's all workable, economically and practically. It's workable. That's number 4. Number 5, show how your plan is better than competing plans if there are other plans out there. If there are competing plans, explain why your plan is better. Number 6, state one objection that you anticipate your plan will render and create an argument to overcome that objection. That's a really important part of persuasive speaking. When you're speaking persuasive, there are going to be people who object to your position on something. You need to understand why they might object. You know, the greatest rule of rhetoric is, in order to be good at rhetoric, you need to understand the other person's position as well as you understand your own. You need to understand that when you're giving a persuasive speech about why this is important or why this needs to be solved, there are going to be people out in the audience who go, no, that's not a problem. In fact, it should be the other way. You need to anticipate and create an argument to overcome that objection. You need to state that argument, state that objection, and refute it. And then number 7, if you have any additional advantages of implementing your plan. That's all in the main points area. The 6-step guide, that's step number 4. Very important to do it that way under the rubric of the persuasive speech. Again, then you have all the instructions about video. And then you have the rubric again down below. Look at the rubric. So again, those first 10 steps are pretty, except, and this may be true of the informative speech as well, number 6. If assigned, a question and answer session was conducted after the last main point was presented. We don't do that. Here you go. That's an automatic 2 points. How is it that on a video recording, anybody's going to be able to interact with you on that? Can't do it. So, don't worry about point 6. You have your reiterate step, your energize step, all the steps of the 6-step guide were used. Then in the material, the content, so 11 through 20, it's a little bit different than the autobiographical. It's a little bit different than the informative. Because your 7 main points are different from those 2 speeches. And included on criteria 15 is main point 6 included a cogent rebuttal of at least 1 major objection to your position. And then you have the delivery criteria 21 through 30. And then you have the other 5 criteria, which would be a word processed outline. Again, if you've turned in your rough draft, you've got that. Word process works cited. Again, if you turn that in with your rough draft, you don't have to turn it in separately. You need to use a presentational aid. You need to have your statement in your rough draft, and you need to have a video recording of good quality. Last of the big assignments, the tribute speech. And that's the last assignment, which is due October 19th. So choose a person or group that is worthy of honor. They can be living or deceased, someone famous or someone you personally know. Tell us about someone you find inspiring so that we can learn from them or follow their example. And you can look at pages 153 to 176 to understand more about the tribute speech. There is a tribute speech worksheet as well embedded in that. The rough draft should have been turned in October. So I have a sample tribute speech that I give when I teach COM-225 in class, which, by the way, 225 class this semester. I give a speech on the director, Michael Mann. He's just an inspiration to me. He's directed movies like Collateral and Heat and Inside Man, a bunch of other great movies. He's in his 80s and he's still directing and producing and screenwriting movies. He's really an incredible director, but he's been an inspiration to me. One of the biggest inspirations is he didn't get a break in the business until he was 40 years old. Hard at his craft for 20 years before he finally got a break. I mean, he was eating dirt for 20 years before he finally got a break. That's one of the more inspirational things about him. And now he's ranked as one of the top 5 directors in the history of the just interesting. But that's an idea for a tribute speech. I've also got another sample tribute speech on the ancient rock group called Heart. So you may know Heart from its song Buddha, but they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Are by far my favorite rock and roll group ever. Practically only listen to them unless I'm listening to 70s funk. And I've given a tribute speech about Heart as well, and their band. So just some ideas for you to noodle on. Somebody once gave a tribute speech on Ben and Jerry, you know, the ice cream dudes. That was interesting. Had tribute speeches on Muhammad Ali, Tiger Woods, various athletes. I remember there was a tribute speech given on Sam Bankman-Fried before a fraud. He was the big crypto guy that was worth about $20 billion before he was convicted of fraud. I had one great tribute speech given on what's the woman who's Martha Stewart? Yeah. Martha Stewart, yeah. Martha Stewart, how he was even inspired, how she embraced her time in prison. That was really fun. Anyway, just some ideas. Now, the difference on the tribute speech is that you're going to have a manuscript delivery. You're going to turn in a manuscript written out, and you're going to read your manuscript for your, but you still need to have eye contact even though you're reading a manuscript. So you need to be very familiar with your material. Below that, you have step 2, record and submit the speech, all that information. And then, of course, your criteria there. Did you follow the 6-step? How was your content and organization, and then your delivery, along with 4 additional criteria, which would be word process manuscript, word process works cited. Your manuscript, that'll be your rough draft. If you turn in your rough draft in manuscript form with all of the 6 steps, you'll be fine. Your intellectual standard, and that'll take care of all of your points on that speech as well. So those are your 4 major. I think you already have an understanding of the video acknowledgement assignments. Good to go on that. Your worksheet assignments, you should understand those now. You need to do those prior to recording your speech. They need to be submitted in word processed form. Don't just write it out, take pictures and send it to me. You need to word process it, and it needs to be done according to the rough draft rubric in your textbook. Your 2 quizzes are self-explanatory. You're going to take them online. You're going to fill in your answers or circle the right answer or whatever, and then send it to me, and I'll grade it. Each of those is worth 40 points. And then the last one is your self-evaluation of your informative speech. So I want to open that one up and just talk briefly about that, and then we'll be done. That's due September 28th. So your informative speech is a day or 2 before that. Your informative speech evaluation is due September 28th. It's worth 30 points, and here's what you're going to do. In your evaluation, you're going to have 6. You're going to have a paragraph of introduction. This is an academic essay. You don't have to do MLA or APA or anything like that. It's just a self-evaluation, but it still needs to be written in an academic way. So you have an introductory paragraph. This is a self-evaluation of my informative speech, which I gave on September 14th, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And then paragraph 2. Went well with your speech. What was good? Paragraph number 3. What do you think didn't go as well as you had hoped? What do you think was a problem in your speech? Paragraph number 4. What do you need to do to improve this speech if you were to ever give it again? Paragraph number 5. What have you so far in this class learned about yourself in terms of public speaking? What have you learned about your abilities to public speak? And paragraph number 6, a paragraph of conclusion. That's it. It should be no more than 2 pages double spaced. No more than that. Do that, okay? Now, one other thing I want to mention. This is really important for you to understand. Very important for you to understand. I do not and never have graded students on their speeches based on against other people in the class. I'm not concerned with who is the most charismatic, who's the funniest. By the way, humor's good. I like humor. Who's the funniest? Who's the smartest? Whatever. I'm not comparing anybody to anybody else in this class. Here's what I'm comparing you to. I'm comparing you to the grading rubric, which you have at the bottom of every one of your speech assignments, so you know how I'm going to grade you. If you follow that grading rubric in presenting your speech, you're going to get an easy A in this class, assuming you turn in all your other assignments. It's really important to understand. I'm grading you against the rubric, not against other people in the class. Okay? So, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you for video number 3.